Hello, beautiful students. Hello. Okay, so I am so excited to share this with you. This is the beauty of the work that we do, is that while we're talking to people, we actually have these spontaneous moments of just light bulb moments, these beautiful things that happen on the spot, and we realize, oh my gosh, that is like a blueprint for whatever this problem is. This is to help your clients and yourself potentially, right? Because I always say, look within yourself first, fix it within yourself first, because once you do that, you know all the range of emotions that you're going to go through or that you've gone through. And when you're talking to someone new, or a client that you've had for a while dealing with this issue of guilt, you will be able to help them through it because you've been through it yourself. And we have all gone through some level of feeling guilty for things that there's really no reason to feel guilty for, and yet it's there. Why is it there? So we have to figure that out. The Guilt Deprogramming Blueprint. So let's go. I'm going to read to you what this is about. And it's a two pages, and it's going to help you with your sessions when guilt comes up, when someone has chronic guilt or self-loathing or feels guilt for things that you look at and think, why are they feeling guilty for that? This is a great tool to actually be able to hand to them so that they can actually process through it. And this is something that on the spot, you can just open it up and you can take them through it. So I'm going to read this to you, and then know that in the PDF below, you will actually have this. So print this up. Print a couple of them, put them in a file so that when your client is going through this, you actually can take it out and you can start asking them the questions and writing notes, and you can actually give them one of these to take home so that when guilt arises, they can actually put themselves through the deprogramming blueprint. They can ask themselves their questions, and it kind of inserts another process into this so that they aren't just defaulting on their program. Okay, so here we go. The first thing is that there are two types of guilt: trigger guilt and spontaneous guilt. Okay, trigger guilt is guilt that comes from historical stuff, right? It's like that deep-seated stuff that we were guilted for or trained to feel guilty about in our childhood, from caregivers, authority figures, strangers, friends of parents, could be teachers. I mean, there's a whole long list of people that we have accepted our programming from throughout our life, and those programs are still deep-seated and they come up at certain times. So is it a trigger guilt, or is it spontaneous guilt? Now, spontaneous guilt is something that right on the spot, something in your current life you're feeling guilty over. Okay, and a lot of times this has to do with guilt stemming from you shitting on yourself, right? According to comparing yourself to other people and how other people do it, and other people must be doing things the right way. And if your way is different, then you start shitting on yourself and feeling guilty for not doing a certain thing a certain way, right? There are two different types, and it's really important during this time that you isolate which ones they are, because most of the time we just feel guilty about things and then we just keep on rolling. We don't question anything else. We just have these guilt feelings and we never really process through them or process them out. We just have these bad feelings about ourselves. And a lot of times this guilt stuff isn't even merited. So let's refresh. So again, I'm going to read this to you. Trigger guilt is deep historical programmed guilt from childhood treatment, verbal abuse, scolding from parents, caregivers, authority figures, and strangers telling you what you should be or do, connected to rigid right and wrong behavior according to someone else, triggered with certain situations that adds fuel to an emotion. Okay. Spontaneous guilt is from emotions of a current situation involving your thoughts, beliefs, and actions. This guilt arises from shooting on yourself in the moment, comparing a perceived expectation of you according to others who do it the right way versus how you do it, or feel about it now, followed by judging yourself for it. So, questions to ask yourself during this time. So the first thing is, what kind of guilt is this? Is it spontaneous guilt or is it a trigger guilt? A trigger guilt often just comes up and you don't even really know why or where it's coming from. You just have this feeling like I feel horrible about myself and I feel guilty, but I can't really isolate where it or why. A lot of times that's because it's so deeply embedded in you that it just adds fuel to whatever the current situation is. Okay. And spontaneous is it's something happening in that moment, and if you were to stop and think about it, you could isolate it. Okay. So the first question is, what kind of guilt is this, spontaneous or trigger? The second question, do I care about the person this situation involves? 9 times out of 10, the question is yes. The answer is yes. You do care about the person. So, what have I lost enthusiasm in then? Let's go over some examples of how somebody could spontaneously feel guilty. Okay. So, I'll give you my example. I had several children. One of them was a dancer, and I think I have been to about 1 million recitals. And towards the end, I didn't want to go anymore. I just felt I didn't want to go. And so guilt arose in me because I feel like if I love my daughter, I should want to go to these things. So, in asking myself the question where this guilt comes is, do I still love and care about the person involved? And of course, the answer is yes. Of course I do. Okay. So the next question I ask is, what have I lost enthusiasm for? It's not the person. I lost enthusiasm just to go to these recitals. And there's reasons why, right? It's hectic, it's loud, there's a lot of people. I feel like I've seen these dance moves 1 million times. They're just, mix matching the dance moves over and over again. I'm burnt out, right? So I've lost enthusiasm for the action, not for the person. And therefore, if I still love the person, I've just lost my enthusiasm. Do I really need to feel that level of guilt? Because I haven't lost my love for the person. I could see how that would make you feel guilty. I've literally lost enthusiasm for an action. That's it. Okay. So when you process through that, you can see, oh, does it really merit that level of guilt? Does it merit any guilt at all? Okay, so most people have simply lost interest or enthusiasm in something, but not the person involved or attached to the action. Because they have not thought that through, they feel guilty as though they are saying they no longer care or love someone, when in actuality they have simply lost interest or enthusiasm for an action being asked that involves the person they love. Okay, that's the difference. Those are very different things. Okay, if you didn't love your kid, that would be a reason to feel guilty. If you just don't love an action that you have to do because you're burnt out on it, that doesn't merit guilt. And if you ask the questions, you can actually separate these things out. Now, the homework, this is the homework you give your clients. Isolate the type of guilt when it arises. Ask yourself if you still love or care for the person involved. Ask yourself what you have lost enthusiasm in specifically as it relates to the subject. Ask if you need to feel guilt for that. If it is a trigger guilt, ask yourself what time period it belongs to. And then I have parentheses, the past, because all triggers, they add fuel to it and they're so embedded, but they're back there from our childhood. But where do they belong? The time period that they can exist in is the past. We put them back there and we can look back anytime and we can feel that, just that sting of pain anytime we go back and look at it. Yet it doesn't need to be the driving force of our life right now. Okay. And if we use critical thinking, chances are we don't agree with any of that crap. So that's where critical thinking is going to come in, right? So it comes from the past. So put it there and choose to empower your current decisions. Ask yourself, who owns your power? You do. Ask yourself, who makes you feel guilty? If you own your power, then you do. Must be you making yourself feel guilty because only you own your power, which means you have critical thinking to change that. Reserve true guilt for when there's a reason to feel guilty, okay? Not every guilt feeling actually merits guilt. Okay. It's just programmed responses and harsh judgments on yourself for various reasons. It took decades to ingrain and program your unconscious thoughts of guilt, self loathing, and unworthy feelings. It will only take 28 to 30 days to deprogram those feelings. And that's the crazy part. If you choose to focus on that anytime it arises and do all of these things, isolate exactly what kind of guilt it is, and all these questions, if you are willing to actually do that for 28 to 30 days, you will then change the pattern of how you do things and how you think about things. And that's just a fact. Through study, it takes 28 to 30 days to change a habit. And really, that's what's going on, is you're just defaulting into a certain pattern. It's just a habit of how you're thinking and how your default is. And you can change that default by putting something in its place. It doesn't just happen miraculously where you say, oh, I'm aware of it now, I just won't do that. Nope, doesn't work that way. You actually have to have steps put in place to change that. Otherwise, your subconscious just is going to go there. You have to have a process that you're going to be following for the next 28 to 30 days until it becomes a habit for you. And once it does, you don't even have to think about it. You just, if it ever comes up, you just think about it and you walk yourself through this process. And over time, you stop having those emotions altogether because your critical mind is saying it doesn't merit that. It just kind of strikes it out when it comes up, or doesn't even come up anymore. So I hope you are as excited about this as I am, because I really felt like when we did this session and I was questioning going through this and going down the list of things, I really saw that light bulb go off for my client. And I also felt it too, like this is an amazing blueprint that can be used over and over again with everybody. They're going to answer their own questions, but this is a great blueprint for deprogramming people's guilty feelings and to help them understand through questioning why they feel what they feel and whether or not it merits that. I'm asking people to be skeptical when guilt comes up, because most of the time it's not merited. And so all these questions are actually handlebars for focus, okay? And when you can be focused, you can change things. So I hope you are excited about this as I am. Add this to all of your session forms that you have already through this course. Have it ready to go so that when you have a client who is struggling with guilty feelings, you can pull that out. You can use it to ask them questions during the session, but you can also send them home with one. And you can say, anytime that hits you while you're at home, fill this out. Ask yourself these questions in that moment. Commit to doing this for 30 days if you really want to change your life. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next class. Bye.